Hello, everybody, and welcome to a spicy, juicy episode of the Chocolate Bros podcast. Are there any spicy, juicy plants out there?
Spicy, juicy plants. I can't think of a spicy, juicy plant. I mean, they're kind of, I have to say though, I have a funny joke with my son, where we have a funny joke with the word croissant
Uh-huh.
because I say it with a really elaborate French accent. And anytime he says, "Hey, I'd like a croissant," I'm like, "I'm sorry. Do you want a croissant?" And I say, and he can never quite say it enough, but he always says, "I'd like a delicious, juicy croissant." I don't think he's ever actually had a croissant because they're not juicy or
No,
spicy.
no, yeah,
But are they scintillating at him? Because if they are, they
yes,
belong on this
yeah.
podcast.
This is a scintillating, spicy, red
Mm.
hot episode of the
Oof.
Chocolate Bros podcast. You're
Nice.
here going back to that juicy, spicy thing. Imagine if a lemon was spicy and you could just sort of squeeze
Mm.
the spice. That
Make it
then you'd be coming up on the Chocolate Bros podcast because that's the kind of spice we have here.
That's the juicy spiciness I'm talking about. We should genetically engineer that. That
Yeah,
seems like something that would go right in
just
line with this
just so
podcast.
that we have a good metaphor for the podcast.
I agree. We'll have to make it pretty. It's going to have to like disseminate widely in the marketplace so people really know what we're talking about. But we can do that. We can
And it's
accomplish
going
it.
to have to scintillate as well.
Oh, it's got to scintillate.
When you eat it, it's going to have to grab your attention and just
Mm,
hold it so that you can't look away from it.
that's right. And just
Similar to
enjoy
this,
the juicy spiciness.
yeah. You're here with Brian and Adam. We are the Chocolate Bros, owners of.
And when you're here, boy, you're right in it.
Yeah, you're right in it. You're here with the Chocolate Bros. We're the owners of Fortunato Chocolate. We've been doing this thing for 15 years now. Check us out on www.fortunatochocolate.com or check out one of our retail locations if you're in the Issaquah, Washington area. We have two, one on Mall Street, the other one on Gilman Avenue. I don't know if it's an avenue or
Gilman. Let's
street.
just go with Gilman. But here's my question, Adam. I want to say this to the people.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be in Issaquah? It's beautiful over here. I got my window open. The sky is nice. There's mountains around us. We got a lake right here. It's a beautiful place. Come by.
Come on by.
The store.
Come on
You
by.
get some. You can enjoy a lovely spot. You can meet some nice people. You can have some great chocolate. Like what's the holdup here? What's stopping you?
Come
That's
on
what
by. We give away free hot chocolate all day, every day, and we're giving away free frozen bananas dipped in chocolate. I came across a Samoan mother with her four children yesterday in front of the shop.
Mm-hmm.
They were a big group of people.
Yeah, you mean a large group of number wise, or that they were large
Both,
folks?
both. There
Yeah,
were
because
four children,
Samoans
and
are large people,
and and,
often.
and
Yeah.
the mother said, "Listen, my kids want a free hot chocolate, but I'm not out here to drop very much money on chocolate for these four kids. They eat a lot of chocolate. Can we just come in and get a free hot chocolate?" I said, "Listen here, miss. I don't know. I didn't get her name. I said, listen here, miss.
Mhm.
The hot chocolate's free. No strings attached.
I
It's
tell
not.
people all the time,
It's
we
not
don't
a
even
trick.
have it.
Just come
We
on
don't
in.
even have it in our POS. We cannot ring up a hot chocolate. We don't have
Here,
it.
here's all we ask in exchange for people taking hot chocolate. If at some point in the future you are in the market for chocolate, we hope that you will consider us.
That's right.
But as for having to buy something when you come in to get a free hot chocolate or free frozen banana dipped in chocolate, you're not required to buy anything. We're just happy to have you come in and get to know us and see you. And if I could see if I could see four children with hot chocolate on all over their face, maybe on their
Mhm.
shirts, then that's payment enough.
Depending on the age, I think that's pretty likely. And I gotta say, for the people out there that are like hot chocolate, I'm not into it. This is not the stuff that you buy in the grocery store. This is not some powder that we mix in with milk and sugar. No, no, no. This is melted chocolate in hot water. I cannot count the amount of people that have come in the store, and I only work one day a week. We work an owner shift in the store on Saturdays. I'm there from Saturdays from about 9:30 to 2:30 most weeks, and I cannot count the amount of people that have come in and said, "Oh, this is the best hot chocolate I've ever tasted." It happens every single time I'm in the store. Someone takes a sip, looks at me, and goes, "That's the best hot chocolate I've ever tasted." They love it. It's great and it's free. You got to come by.
Come
You got
by.
to come by.
There's no reason. So you got the weather, you got the mountains,
Mm.
you got the
The
lake.
gracious Issaquanians that are
The Issaquanians.
world renowned for their generosity and
You've got the fact that you almost never know if you're on a street or an avenue, which is
Mm.
fun. It's a fun thing. It's sort
It
of
could be
fun.
it could be a place. It could be a boulevard. You just don't know. We keep it fresh and we keep you guessing.
Yeah. The signs are ambiguous. You just don't know. You just know the name of the
Mhm.
throughway that you're on, but you don't know what kind of throughway it is. So there's a lot
Is,
of stuff happening in this book.
is it a way? Is it an avenue? I don't know. I don't know. And frankly, I'm not even that concerned because I'm just in this loving life, drinking free hot chocolate, having a free frozen banana dipped in chocolate. What could be better than that?
I wonder why they have all the different nomenclatures for the different throughways. What is really the difference between a boulevard and an avenue, Brian?
I mean, I think a boulevard has a certain savoir-faire, a certain panache, a certain French sensibility that lends it just a little bit of extra oomph, you know. Now a way is just a transport route, I think, you know, and a street, it's very utilitarian. But when you're talking about a boulevard, Adam, it's got a certain
What about an avenue?
It's got a je ne sais quoi, you know.
What about an avenue? What about an avenue?
Avenues are great. Avenues are like the avenues are like the artery. You know, as the artery is to the blood flow, the avenue is to traffic flow. It's a great way to just get from one place to another.
Man, you definitely missed your calling as a civil engineer, bro.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't want to go to anybody else when it comes to deciding when we're laying out the city. Hey, is this going to be an avenue or a boulevard? Let's get Brian on.
Look, I'm passionate about city planning, urban planning, and I'm not going to apologize for that, Adam. It's my passion. Okay,
I can tell, man.
Yeah,
please.
Specifically, the subset of urban planning, which deals with how to name streets. I mean, I just think it's my forte.
In truth, I'm pretty sure they're just pulling little pieces of paper out of a hat.
I think
Gilman Street.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's like hurricanes, where they just rotate it. You know, your hurricanes have an alpha. Well, it's not alphabetical. It's just that, you know, every sixth one is an avenue, and then the one after that's a way. Could be a circle. Maybe every few rounds they put a circle in there.
Right. Yeah. Court.
A court. It could absolutely be a court. And by the way, I've never been on a circle that was actually circular. They're all pretty much just straight lines like the rest of the street.
Well,
so I don't get where they're going with that.
Next time I find myself on a boulevard, I'll be sure to ask myself, is there a certain French je ne sais quoi? I can't put my finger on it, but is there just some kind of a romantic?
It's like obscenity, Adam. There's no great definition for it, but you know it when it's there.
Yeah. Is someone playing an accordion softly on this street?
Absolutely. Is somebody sitting on the side of the street having coffee, maybe smoking a cigarette? Well, nice fashion, you know?
Yeah. A beret.
Jaunty beret. That does everything. Does everything. Your father-in-law is a beret wearer, as I recall.
No, he's not a beret. He wears the old paperboy.
It's more like a Scottish style paperboy hat. Yeah,
he looks good though. It's a good.
He does. No, he's a fashionable guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is good. Good. I just want to applaud you, Brian, for some solid opening banter. Everybody, if you're listening, that was unplanned. That was off the cuff. We didn't before this podcast have me. All right, we're gonna start with the boulevard and street stuff, and then we'll transition into the main thrust.
For anybody who feels like that had to be rehearsed because it was so well done, let me disabuse you of that notion. We have never once rehearsed anything for this podcast. We occasionally go over what the subject's going to be. I think today the total go over the subject matter was maybe 2.5 seconds. Is that about right, Adam?
No, this is just decades of just brotherly chemistry. You can't force this. It has to be natural. It has to develop slowly over time.
That's right. It's like a stew. You know, it's like a stew. You can't rush it. You can't cook a stew in the microwave. You'd be foolish to try.
No, it's not going to come. I might not be able to call it a stew. Since we're on this, tell me now the difference between a stew and a bisque and a soup, right?
Well, that's super obvious, Adam. A bisque is a thick soup. A stew is a thick sauce. That's like, come on.
A stew is a thick sauce?
Yeah, because, okay, let's imagine that you have like a plate of rice, and then you're going to put some kind of protein with a sauce over it, but the sauce is normally kind of very liquidy, and maybe there's just a little bit, it might be on the side, or it might kind of seep down in. Not so the stew, my friend. Not so the stew. The stew is so thick, it actually goes in its own bowl. It contains its own self. A sauce is related to something else, but a stew stands alone.
I didn't say a sauce. I said a bisque, a soup, and
a stew. Well, a bisque exactly.
What about a chowder?
A bisque and a chowder are closely related. I mean, we're just talking about degrees. We're talking about degrees, but
I'd say
both
for
of them
sure.
are a non like sustancia or a non consomme or broth type soup.
I think for sure you're stronger on the city planning stuff.
I
That's just
mean, bisques are not a passion of mine. I would say that they're, an area of interest. Let's put
okay.
it.
Very
Yeah.
good. Well, again, everybody, check us out at www.fortunadochocolate.com. We own a chocolate company. This is the Chocolate Bros podcast. We also talk soup, we talk roads. So Brian, I wrote a couple of emails about this. I've written 2 emails about it now.
Mhm.
This salesman who called me from Yelp has generated a lot of thinking on my part.
Mhm.
I've written 2 emails now, and now we're going to do a podcast on a parallel topic. I want to
Mhm.
talk about the experience that we've both had convincing people, because
Mhm.
I believe that the idea of convincing a person is taking a lot more lightly. Is taken a lot more lightly than it should be taken. I think the job of convincing somebody could be your kid, could be your spouse, could be a sales job, could be something about business, whatever. Could be a religious thing, could be a
All right.
political thing.
Can I just take convincing
Yeah.
your spouse right off the table? Because that's never going to happen.
It- it-
Let's not deal in impossible hypotheticals, Adam. Let's talk about like
I dis-
actual reality.
hey, I disagree. I actually disagree with that, and
Well,
probably
convince me then. So convince me.
so. I'm not going to get into it right now. It's a slow burn. I will chip away at this with you over time because that's what the job requires.
Mm.
Uh-huh. And
Mhm.
I would have to actually dig into what are the topics that your wife doesn't. Nothing. She doesn't buy anything from you. You can't convince her of anything. Your wife.
In my particular case, no. She gave up on me long ago. There's
So
no,
she
there's no
just
convincing.
she just rejects it on principle.
That's correct.
All
Yes,
right.
that's correct. Yes.
All right.
So you came in and mentioned this the other day, Adam. I commented on your. I made a silly joke about your Yelp column, but it was a really interesting email that you sent out and an interesting thing. Now, this is something that I know you think about a lot more than I do because it's your job
Mhm.
to convince people.
That's right.
It's my job to deliver things to people,
A high quality product.
a high quality product. It's my
Consistently.
job to sort of create processes, make things happen operationally, but you have to convince people to walk in the store, to make a purchase, to a lot of different sort of things in sales and also in other business things that you have. Your job is to convince, and also I think you are interested in a way that I'm kind of frankly not, in convincing people of things in conversations that you have, and you've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I guess in my mind, I just sort of feel like convincing people is impossible. You know what I mean? Like it just can't be done. And then there are people who think that all they have to do to convince is just sort of lay out the facts. And then there are people who've actually done some deep thought and have some experience with it, like you. What does your experience say about actually convincing?
Well, one of my case studies has always been you going out into Campo and pulling cacao farmers into our project. So I just want to lay that out there. I've
Mhm.
always taken that as a good example and a good model, and I've used the lessons that I believe that I have gleaned from your experience
Mhm.
in my sales and marketing approach, and I believe that it has served me greatly. My general feeling is that what you just said is an important insight. You're feeling that people cannot be convinced generally. Um, I actually think there's a lot of truth. I believe that there's a lot of truth in that. And at any time, even maybe with your kids or you mentioned your spouse, I think you might as well take that as a jumping off point for any
Mhm.
kind of sales and marketing job or any kind of convincing or persuasion job that you want to undertake. You might as well go ahead and assume that this person does not want to be convinced and will be very difficult to be convinced, and use that as the touchstone for the work that needs to be taken from there. And then you
Mhm.
sort of you sort of work backwards towards what needs to occur um, for somebody who doesn't want to be convinced to have their mind change. And that means it's going to be a long, slow, meticulous, strategic job, and not something that will be done in one meeting ever,
It's it's
ever,
interesting
ever,
that
ever,
you
ever, ever.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I guess until you just said that, you've brought this up before, but until you just said that, I guess I never really looked at me going to Campo and trying to enlist farmers to work with us as a sort of a sales job or as a convincing, as an effort to convince. But yeah, it was.
All right,
It's
so
true.
let's just go through the series of events quickly. All right, you get into we go into the cacao business,
Mhm.
right? Your first stop is in the city of Cayenne,
Correct.
and at that point, what you're just going out to a bunch of little, like a bunch of little villages. You're buying cacao from all over the region. We hadn't focused on Warango yet. Like how did you first go out and start approaching cacao farmers and trying to get them to sell you their cacao? Just
So
right off the top, not even Warango, just at the very beginning.
right. So just at the from the start, you have to know that going into a place as an outsider, as a different nationality, as a different skin color, as a different language speaker, you're going to lack a certain credibility. You're going to have a certain wow factor, but you're going to lack a certain credibility. And you need a credibility builder. And in my case, that was Sarah Paredes, who worked for the regional agricultural office, who presented me to a lot of people. And then the next person who presented me to a lot of people was a guy that worked with us for a while called Luciano Troyes. And he introduced me to a lot of farmers. So at that point, we weren't asking farmers to get it to programmatically sell to us. We were asking them to sell one time for us. That was a fairly easy thing to do because we were paying cash. It wasn't a long-term commitment for them. We paid them more than what they would normally get. So you need a credibility builder to start that.
So I just want to point out one thing. You just like completely unprompted, you use the word credibility, which building up credibility is always a huge thing in making a sale or doing some kind of a persuasion tactic, right? So unknowingly, you did one of the key things, which is you got to get some credibility in there. You got to make people
Interesting.
Believe that you're a real person and you're not there to try to scam them.
So if you don't have somebody to present you like I did, what are the steps?
Well, then you got to I mean, you didn't have to worry about that, but you would have to stop and strategize and think, this person's a stranger. They don't know me at all. I'm walking around with a free hot chocolate sign, right? At Fortunado Chocolate. We talked about it in the intro. It sounds like a trick. It sounds like a scam, right? Like, okay, they're going to bring me in to get some free hot chocolate and they're going to try to make me buy something. Right, but I
worst case scenario, they might like duct tape me, and it could something sinister.
Oh yeah, whatever, right?
What
but,
happens?
I'm walking around the mall and nobody's stopping me. But so now you have this Samoan woman that I mentioned. She says, "Hey, look, I don't have any money. I don't want to buy anything." So there has to be a reassurance, a credibility builder saying, "Look, it's not a scam," and then, so the credibility issue is a really, really big deal. If you want to try to talk someone into doing your diet program, you better have some proof that you actually have a track record of helping people lose weight. Otherwise, like it's going to be a non-starter. So
and you're probably going to need to be fairly fit and thin too. It's why most trainers probably need to be fairly fit. You're right. So if you don't have someone presenting bona fides for you, then you have to somehow present your own.
Yeah, which is why also in sales, a referral is the strongest lead that you can get, because you walk in with your credibility extremely high. So in this case, you're going to talk to farmers. You're showing up with somebody who's vouching for you that you're a real businessman. It's worth it to explore the opportunity, even if it's on a small scale to start.
It's an interesting thing about credibility building, which is, so if you're trying to get a farmer to sell you beans one time, then having somebody that they know present you and paying more money is enough. But if you're trying to get farmers to agree to sell all their product to you over the course of years and to break the relationship that they've previously had with their bean buyer, then you need to take another step. Just the fact that you've been presented by someone they know, or even someone that they trust, isn't enough. And so then you have to go to next level credibility building. And you're right, that is a very slow, very exacting process.
So in the beginning, you're just getting a presentation, because in the beginning, you're really just trying to learn how to do the post-harvest process.
Right. A referral gets you FaceTime. In sales and in our project and in life. A referral gets you FaceTime, but beyond that, you have to build your own credibility and you have to build your product's credibility.
So pretty much in the beginning, all of the cacao that you were buying is just as a referral from Sarah, right? And then maybe word of mouth, maybe a little word of mouth, people saying, "Hey, I know another guy who will sell to you." It's maybe the brother or a cousin or a sister or something like that.
Right.
And then when you moved out, so then after we got the genetic results back, and we decide we're going to set up shop in Puerto Ciruelo out in the district of Morango, and we're going to build our processing facility in an old rice mill. Then you actually had to get farmers in Morango en masse into the project. What did that look like in the very beginning, and how did it develop?
So I'm guessing that what I'm about to say to you is gonna probably will be, and based on your email that you wrote about the Yelp guy, it's kind of almost exactly on the same lines. What I did was I organized a bunch of meetings where I could sit down and listen to what the people had to say. Sit down, listen, and try to understand what their hesitations might be, what their issues might be, what their needs were, because I felt like I already had an idea about that and that we could solve it, but you got to hear it from them. And you got to listen. People need to be heard and listened to and consulted and brought along. So I did an endless amount of going out on a motorcycle to a meeting with a group of 6 or 7 farmers from a particular little town, drinking Inca Cola, which I despise and can't stand drinking.
Hey, we had a Peruvian listener to the podcast leave a comment disagreeing vehemently with your take on Inca Cola.
Look,
I'm middle of the road on it. I could take it.
There's very few hills that I'm willing to die on, but I'm sorry. Pineapple bubblegum soda is gross, and that's just a fact. That's objective fact, Adam.
I call it yellow cough syrup soda, but that's not much better.
So bad. But you know what? Hey, if you love Inca Cola, I'm married to a Peruvian woman. She'll drink some Inca Cola. So
that's what the Incas drank.
That's
take it up with the Incas. That's why. Hey, a lot of people don't know. That's why it's called Incas.
That's right. That was the official drink of the Inca rulers. In fact, as far as I recall, the Inca. Which one was it? Atahualpa, I think, was the first one.
Atahualpa was the last one.
Right, but he was the first one to build an actual bottling plant, and that's why he was in Cajamarca when he was putting together a bottling plant over there in Baños del Inca. Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
Most people don't know that. And not only does corn, potatoes, and a lot of other stuff come from Peru, but the bottling plant was actually invented. In 1568 or something.
The Incas were tremendous administrators in a lot of ways.
And just their process orientation was not. I mean, most people don't know. Not only was that the first bottling plant, but they came up with Six Sigma. Like, who knew?
They were really far ahead of their time.
Oof, very far.
Yeah. All right. So go ahead, Bri. Sorry. So you're right. All right. So, and let me ask you another question here, because this is, I think, this is an important wrinkle as well. And I'm glad we're talking about this, because we could talk more in depth about this than I could ever necessarily write about it. It would take a long time to get into this. The cacao farmers you were talking to were already selling. They already had other buyers for their cacao, and a lot of times these were close family members, and there's also a risk in breaking ties with their current buyer in order to sell to you. Let's tell me quickly a little bit about who they were already selling cacao to.
Yes, every bean we were trying to buy already had a buyer, was already guaranteed to be sold. So we had to, and I think this is so. First, you listen, and I think that's no different than when someone comes in the store, where the people most likely to buy are people that we can ask, what are you looking for? Ask them some questions. Once they give us some information, we can almost certainly get them to eat something that they're going to love, and then they're going to want to buy.
And if you consider the mirror of that, if they came in and you just bombarded them with information about every single product, it would be so extremely off-putting.
Yeah, you'd be like, hey, eat these apricots, guys. They're the best. So, and you're going to want to buy them. But go ahead and put them in.
Right. Hey, welcome in. Let me tell you about this and this and this bar 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 and this bar. It doesn't
work. So
it's much better to listen and gather information.
Listening is critical. And then if you want somebody to change over to give you their business instead of who they've already been giving their business to, or sell you their beans instead of selling their beans to who they've already, you got to give them a good reason to. I mean, you have to allay their fears and give them some good reasons to, right?
But you can't really give them a good reason until you understand their situation.
That's right, because the reason
what you think is a good reason and what they think is a good reason might not be the same thing. In fact, that's very common the case. You're talking about your wife before. What you think is a good reason for something and what your wife thinks is a good reason, or even what me and you think are good reasons for things are very different.
Well, here's the problem, Adam, and I've thought a lot about this. See, men are from Venus and women are from Mars.
I think you got it backwards.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's backwards. And so, yeah,
No, men are from Mars.
yeah,
Women
right.
are from Venus.
They're right. As I said, and
Because of
so
the alliteration. Men,
uh-huh.
Mars.
Men Mars, women Venus, but that's not alliterative.
There's no planet that starts with W.
The planet Walter, is that not a thing?
Oh,
Is
I
that
forgot
not-
about that. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, they messed that book title up.
They really did.
Why didn't
No.
they go from men are
The
from
point-
Mars, women are from Walter?
I know, and the point is, Adam, and you may not have like grokked what they were trying to say with this, but men and women are very different. They're very different. They come at things from a different way. You wouldn't understand, but let me just explain this to you. And that's why sometimes what the man thinks would be convincing
It's a good reason.
really resonate with the woman. Yeah,
Correct.
Mhm.
And also, brothers are different too. Like
they are. That's
well,
right.
Yeah, and I can say from our business experience and just from
Mm-hmm.
talking about philosophy and all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
We also have a different view of the world, and what we consider good reasons for things are also very different.
And so there you go. Everybody's different. And so
Yeah.
the things that would have made a farmer think twice about selling to us were sometimes different for each farmer. Certainly different in each village. It's different in every area. The economic conditions are different. The way the transport situation is different. The harvest cycle is different. The productivity of the trees is different. Everything's different. Even in little towns in the Peruvian jungle that are very close together. So that's why listening is so important. And you're a sales professional. I'm sure that you have encountered this almost every time you make a sale, which is that listening phase is to understand where someone's coming from. It's fundamental. It's foundational. It cannot be dispensed with. There is no way around it. You must take the time to listen and understand the other person's point of view and their perspective in order to convince them. Am I right? Is that the number one most important thing?
Let me tell you, the single most powerful tactic I ever learned from reading a million sales books and taking sales training programs is before you give your sales presentation, you have a meeting where you're just going to ask a bunch of questions. You would be extremely naive to try to come in with a pitch before you've had a chance to collect information.
Mhm.
And so I remember this happened to me many times when I was selling chocolate.
Mhm.
But I learned it from a previous sales job when I was selling software. I would when I was selling chocolate, I'd say, "Can I just get on the phone with you for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and just ask you a bunch of questions?" And people really are usually fine with this because people like to answer questions about themselves. They really like it. It makes
People
them
like to have their brains picked. It's actually
they do,
considered kind
absolutely.
of flattering. Yeah.
So I'd get on the phone with a buyer for a restaurant or even a pastry chef, and I just say, "Hey, how do you use chocolate? What are your recipes? What are you making? What chocolates are you currently using?
Mhm. Can I have some of that? Can you send me that? Can you send me that? Because it sounds delicious.
Can you mail cake?
I'd love. Do you have bisque? Are you a bisque producer? Because I'd love to have some bisque.
Tell me the difference between bisque and mousse and soup and stew. I've asked other people. They give
Adam, you're mixing metaphors. A moose is a large mammal with the antlers and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with soup. Okay, but continue.
So and what I would find a lot of times is, especially with a larger restaurant, is that they were under contract with Valrhona.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's fine.
We should mention that Valrhona is a large French couverture maker, and when you're under contract with Valrhona, you are contractually obligated to buy your chocolate from them.
In
They have
some
different
cases,
chocolates on offer.
they will give you price breaks if you sign an exclusive contract.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't make sense for me to even hit you with a pitch or send you product samples or anything. Like if I can find that out right up front, I can scratch you off my list, and then
You can chalk that conversation up to information gathering and learning, but it's not going to be a sale.
Yeah, whereas you might give that same person a 45-minute sales pitch, only to find out at the very end that they're not going to be a prospect. Or you could find out that people are using a very inexpensive chocolate. They could be using a Belcolade, or they could be using one of the lower end Callebaut products. But these are both competing chocolate companies that we were up against, and that can tell you something, and that will inform the way that you try to position your product offering. So anyways, one of the best tools is to just pick someone's brain. You and I were just talking the other day. We don't have to go into details, but I was just asking you a little bit about your politics, and you told me something that I think the particular political party never really would take the time to address, but that's important. So there could just be all these little details that a person is holding in their brain that are not obvious, that will exponentially increase the chances of you making a sale or
Mhm.
persuading that if you don't ask questions, you will never dig up.
Right. So I think that's true. So let's take it away from the sales angle and talk about
Let's go back to the
personal
customer.
interaction.
Uh-huh.
Personal interaction. So if I'm talking to you and you express something, and I, for whatever reason, am feeling invested in convincing you of an alternate viewpoint, which is it the same in a non-sales environment? The first thing I should probably do is really ask a lot of questions and really listen and really understand your viewpoint. Because I feel like I need to convince you of an
For
alternate
whatever
viewpoint.
reason, right?
I'm
Whatever reason.
right. I probably am going to disagree with a lot of what you say, but I can't let that impede me from listening and really understanding, digging into understanding the basis for your viewpoint. Is it the same in sales as it is in personal?
From my experience, I would say that is the case.
Mhm.
Just like I said, if someone walks into the shop and you just hammer them with all of
Mhm.
the information, let's just say you go out to lunch with your buddy,
Mhm.
and for some reason you think it's important that they agree with. Let's just say because this is common, right? For some reason, you just have what's the word? A stick in your craw. What do you have in your craw?
A stick, yeah, something sticks in your craw,
Something
but you don't
sticking in
have a stick in your craw. Yes.
something sticking in your craw, and you just think everybody needs to agree with your politics.
By the way, I had my craw taken out in '87, so I don't have that problem. But a lot of people have stuff
Yeah,
sticking
they
in their
still have
craw.
the craw and stuff gets stuck, and
Right.
you just said, you know what? I need this person to agree with my politics. And you go out to lunch and you say, hey, that son of a gun who's in office? He's a piece of crap. And let me give
Mhm.
you all, and this is bipartisan, right? This could go either way. You go, hey, that son of a gun who's in office? I just really hate that guy, and I
Mhm.
want to tell you why. And you just lay it all on the person, and then the person hears what you says, but they don't agree with you, and they either go, well, I pretty much disagree with everything you just said, and
Mhm.
that is usually going to happen if you pound someone with every single piece of information that you have. Somewhere in there, they're going to find something to disagree with, and it's going to mess up the entire, your entire
That's
thing.
right.
Don't you
I
think
mean,
so?
I think so, except for the one thing that everybody agrees on, which is about these fat cat bureaucrats in Olympia
Oh
that are
yeah,
just getting rich on the labor of the working man. These
I
fat cat bureaucrats in Olympia
know.
are stifling our business innovation.
I know. No,
It's a
no. What
silly.
cracks me up is every time you do the fat cat thing, it's never in Washington D.C. It's always in Olympia,
It's always in Olympia because we're
in
living
the
in
state,
Washington State.
capital.
That's right. So,
So,
but you're 100% right.
well,
So,
so I mean, a much
okay, but
better.
let's take that example. Two people sit
Yeah.
down. It could be you and me. It could be anybody else, and they both express views that are diametrically opposed, and they're strongly held views. Is there any point in going any further with it? Can convincing happen, or is it just should you bother to then learn what's
Let me
going on
ask.
in their
So,
head? What's the protocol?
So the question to ask, and I think a lot of people don't ask themselves this question, which
Mhm.
is, hey, how much do I actually care about this thing? Like,
Yeah,
am I
yeah.
really wanting to convince a person, or am I just venting?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just venting, I think you might want to ask if a lunch with your friend is a good place to vent. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're just going to be venting, then it doesn't really matter if you convince them, and probably you're going to get into an argument. Maybe you like arguing or something. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's
There are those
yeah,
people. Yeah.
but if the question is, I believe that we're fighting for the soul of the country and our
Mm-hmm.
very future, and it depends on me getting the word out and convincing people
Mm-hmm.
to see the things my way.
It's tougher to let it slide.
Well, and you really have a deep-seated belief that what you have to talk to this person about is of the utmost importance, then you should be dedicated to doing a good job of it and doing
Uh-huh.
it right, right? You should
Yeah. Yeah.
you
That's a
should
great
take it
point. Great point.
seriously. If you're
Mm-hmm.
just going to vent, you might as well not even bring it up, or
That's right.
you might as well tell the person in advance, like, hey, I'm not trying to convince you, I'm just venting, and you
You,
can feel free to vent back to me. We can
yeah.
argue with each other, but it's all a surface thing. We're just doing it for fun.
You just made the most salient possible point, Adam, which is okay. So politics is where kind of the society's at these days. I basically just leave it onto the side. I don't really care I don't really care about the
And
politics.
if you
I'm
don't care, then
talking
there is
about
no reason to talk about it.
exactly. So for me, I don't ever bring it up. If someone else does, I try to just get out of it. I'll even go as far as to say I don't talk politics. I do with some people, but mostly I don't because it's not that interesting and because everybody's so cemented in it. It seems like it can only detract from making personal connections with people. But what you said is really, really interesting and really important, I think. If you believe it's important enough, or if your job depends on it because it's sales, or if there's a reason that you feel compelled to make that convincing argument, to really try and get in there and change someone's mind, either to make a sale, either to sell a product in a store, or because it's important to you personally, maybe it's a religious-based thing, maybe it's political, maybe it's something else, then you should at least respect yourself and the other person and the process enough to become proficient at
And
it.
the issue,
Yeah.
and you should ascribe enough
Mhm.
importance to the issue at hand to
Mhm.
want to do a competent and proficient job. And so
That's a
basically,
great point, Adam. That's a
and
really, really strong point.
and so what you were just saying about cacao farmers,
Mhm.
you drove out and you had all these endless meetings with groups of 6 or 7 cacao farmers. I mean,
Mhm.
how long did that process take? A year?
Uh, More. I mean, it was constantly ongoing because we kept adding villages even after we had already
Yeah,
started. So,
right. You had,
and not only that, even after you're started, you still have to go and maintain the relationship, go out on pickup day, stand, talk, ask about the kids. Like you, so I think this probably brings up the next thing, which is if you want to convince somebody of something, anything, it's a whole lot easier to do if you have a personal relationship with it and understand not just their thoughts on this thing, but them in general, because everybody's constantly living in their own little reality. They're the star of their own show, their own narrative, and they may have legal or financial or romantic or family issues that are flavoring and influencing their point of view. And you need to understand all that if you're going to get in there and convince and relate to somebody.
yeah, one of the things that blows my mind is I could reach out, you could see a person, you could touch them, you see what they look like, you can hear them talking. You literally have no idea what they're thinking about.
That's right.
You couldn't even guess.
Mhm.
Like it could be anything. But the point that I was making before is if it's that important to you, you might as well accept that you might have to have like 10 lunches, not one lunch.
That's right.
You ain't gonna convince them in a lunch, no matter, it's just not gonna happen.
Well, and if you're smart, what you said is right. You have to be patient. If you're smart, you won't try. If you're smart, the first 5 times will be all about listening and talking about their kids and understanding the economics of their farm and just getting to know them.
Correct. And likewise, if you're trying to convince someone about religion or politics or that they should get better grades, like that your kid should work harder, whatever.
Something that every parent is basically constantly trying to convince
Well,
their kids of.
usually what will happen, right, is if you go out to a lunch with someone, you'll say like, hey, how come you're not getting good grades? And they'll start saying a whole bunch of stuff. And your parent instinct is to go, well, that's a bunch of hogwash, right? Like, you listen to me. I know better than you. I'm older. I've been around longer. What you're telling me right now is not right. It's wrong. And I'll listen up because I'm going to hit you with the knowledge. And you'll do the same thing in a political debate. You say, hey man, tell me, what do you think about the current president? And they'll start telling you all this stuff. And then all of a sudden your heart starts racing. And you go, hey, let me tell you something. All that you just said, total bull crap. Now listen up, because I'm going to lay it on you. You have to fight that urge. You have to fight. You really just got to go, oh, really? Tell me more. And even if you just like wholeheartedly disagree with everything a person is saying, you're on a fact-finding mission. You're on a fact-finding mission.
Yeah.
Because you might talk to a cacao farmer, and a lot of what they're telling you about who they're selling to or why they're selling it to you might not make any sense about how they do post-harvest processing. Your instincts might be firing and saying like, well, this is all wrong what they're telling me. They should not be doing it this way. It's the wrong way to do it. But if you tell them that in the first meeting, they're gonna like it's all gonna fall apart on you.
That's right. And also, they're not giving you the whole story because they don't trust you yet. You have to establish some kind of trust. And that's the most important thing too, is to remember you're not going to get the whole story on try number 1. You got to take some time and get to know somebody and be perceived as someone they can actually give the other layers of the story to. And what you just said is right. Like, you never know what's going through someone's mind. I had an interesting experience about this that really brought that home to me and really made me think about it. So I'm a snowboarder, as you know, and I was at a ski resort last year. I was there alone, getting on a lift, and I was standing next to somebody, and the lifts handle like 4 people at a time. There were no long lines that day. There was maybe a 30-second wait for the lift, and I was next to somebody. And it would have been the 2 of us going on a lift. And there was a guy with 2 younger guys with him that I presumed was a dad and his 2 boys. Right. And as I was about to get on the chair with this person standing to my right, some other people, like employees of the resort or something, kind of came in awkwardly, skipped the line and came in awkwardly. and I wasn't exactly sure what was going on or if I would fit. And I kind of let them go and the person that was with me go ahead. And then it was just me for the next chair. Right. And it was kind of like a time waster, like they took a chair. I could have gotten on that chair, but I didn't quite understand what was happening. And so to be safe, I just waited. And then it turned out that I could have, but I didn't. And then it was just me. I signaled to the people behind me that they could go on with me, but they didn't want to. And as I was getting on the chair, the guy, he seemed like he was maybe 50 in his 50s like me. And he made a kind of a snide comment about how I had screwed it up, about why hadn't I gone or something like that. And I was kind of surprised that he would say that. And I made a kind of a smart alecky comment back. I said something like, well, I'll be happy to reimburse you for your lost 17 seconds. Like that. And he kind of looked at me kind of upset, you know what I mean? And I got the impression that my impression was, this is some lawyer who's there with the Suns, and he didn't appreciate me making a comment back to him. And he was kind of upset about it. And my impression was, why is this guy griping? It's a few seconds. Like, did it really require the comment? Now, as I was going up the chair, I was like, okay, so is this gonna, I was like, obviously I'm not going to continue this conversation up at the top of the chair. Is he that upset that he's going to like follow me down and track me down and like make a comment about it? And it started me thinking, what would cause him to be that upset over those 17 seconds? What would cause him? Now, he might have some stuff going on that I don't know anything about. Something, he might have woke up on the wrong side of the bed. He might have a sick relative that's weighing on his mind. He might have a business problem that's going on. He could have just had a negative interaction with one of his sons or the kids that was with him. Someone else may have just come up and cut in line and put him in a sour mood or something like that. You have no idea what's the basis for him being upset enough. He might just be a jerk, but he might not be. He might be a good person who normally wouldn't have said anything, but there are external factors that have nothing to do with me or really even to do with that situation that caused him to be in that state of mind. And you never know what's going on.
And if he is just a true blue jerk, right? Let's just assume he's just a jerk. He's always in a bad mood, and you're in his family, and you want to try to get him to stop being a jerk. That's a convincing job.
Right. So what do you do? So what do you do?
Just like, hey, dude, it takes, it ain't gonna happen in one lunch.
Right.
You're talking about like, hey man, you're a jerk. We're sick of it. You'd be like, oh yeah, well, you can go to hell. And by the way, you're paying for lunch. That's you. And that if a guy's a deep seated jerk, you're talking about trying to facilitate a spiritual awakening. Do you know how hard it is to get a guy to stop being a jerk if he's been a jerk for a long time? It's outrageous how hard that would be. And if it was important to you to convince that guy to stop being a jerk, you're talking about heavy yeoman work that's going to take a couple of years probably.
Yes.
And if you're not going to commit to that, then you're deciding it's actually not that important.
It could take a lifetime just to moderate a jerk in your family's behavior. No doubt about it. And sometimes you just disengage, but back to the job of when you do want to convince people or need to for your job, it's so important to keep that in mind. And I just find this in life, going through life, like there's all kind of snippy interactions with people. And you just have to remember that on any given day, that could have nothing to do with you. It could have everything to do with some stuff that's happening to that person that has nothing to do with you, but it impacts you. But you have to take into account the possibility that that person's got some real legitimate issues that are wearing on them. You gotta fight through the urge to be nasty and give a little benefit of the doubt, because
are you good at that, Brian?
I'm getting better. I think I'm getting better and getting a little calmer as I get a little older, as I have kids, at not taking the bait. And I try to hold that thing in the front of my head. You have no idea the real reason that caused that interaction. So disengage from the interaction. And if it is the fact that it's something else that's working on that person. And by the way, I think we've all had the experience where somebody then comes back and says, I'm really sorry. I had something else happened and it just put me in a sour frame of mind. I took it out on you.
Hey,
had nothing. That's happened to all of us, right?
Hey, I know we're running short on time. I wrote an email about this about maybe like, it might be a year and a half ago or something. I remember once I was walking around with my free hot chocolate sign over in front of Target, and I saw two women were yelling at each other. This is exactly, it was crazy. It's almost exactly what you're talking about. Two women were yelling at each other. They had backed into each other in the middle of the road.
Mhm.
Both were put in reverse at the same time, and neither was looking.
And they were probably at the angle to where each of them looked over their shoulder and they just couldn't.
And
There
they
was
just,
both in their mutual
they,
blind spot.
and they were clearly at fault. They were clearly like, it looked like neither one of them was at fault. They were both at fault, and neither was at fault. Like they
Right.
both were like, they were dead in the middle, and they
Mhm.
were arguing and yelling, "Hey, no, it's your fault. No, it's my, no, it's your fault. It's your fault." And nobody was doing anything. Everybody's just standing around watching. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go get in the middle of this thing and just try to.
Smart, smart, Adam. That's a really good idea.
So you know what? I'm just gonna butt in on this.
I'm just gonna go involve myself in something that does not involve me.
Yeah, but it felt like someone had to do something,
Okay.
right? And
Did you feel like this was escalating towards?
it was no. They might have
Yeah.
started. It might have gotten to a fist fight or something.
Okay.
I mean, they were at each other's throats.
And just to paint the picture, are we talking about young women,
We're
older,
talking-
younger?
so
Are you
we're-
talking
we're-
like
we- one was
old
one
enough
was-
to know better? What are we talking
one,
about? Here?
One was older. One
Like
was
it, like
older.
a 50 or 60-year
No,
old woman?
no. I would say more like in her mid 70s.
Okay, so
And
an
the other
older,
one,
an
yeah,
elderly woman.
older, but strong and fit. And the
Mhm.
other one was a younger gal, heavy set, tattooed, smelled like cigarettes.
Okay. Mhm.
All right. Now I walked over. I said, "Listen,
Interesting details you just gave there. By the way, I got to say that was a really interesting detail set. Smells like cigarettes and older, but seemed strong.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I always,
It's interesting how you perceive people. That's great.
one was like older and fit. You could
Mhm.
tell she worked out. The other
Mhm.
one was younger, heavy set, tattoos, smell like cigarettes. I mean,
Okay.
that's that's the person she was.
Okay.
And so I said, hey, you were yelling at, I just came out to you, you're yelling at each other right in Target. We probably should cool it down. Plus, I just want to point out there's a camera up here. Like the whole crash was caught on camera.
Mhm.
So ultimately, the insurance companies are gonna work it out.
Mhm.
So, like yelling at each other like this, unless you actually are gonna get into a fist fight, like nothing's gonna come of this.
Yeah, it's a paperwork issue at this point.
I say they're gonna submit the video,
Mhm.
and then the insurance companies are gonna work it out. So, if you haven't, you should exchange insurance paperwork, and they hadn't. They just went straight to yelling. Said,
Mhm.
you should park, get your cars out in the middle of the road and exchange insurance. And they both said, all right, you're right. So they pulled away.
So you were able to bring the heat down and
yeah. So,
do a cold ball on it.
but
Good for
check
you.
this out. All right. So they pulled into their parking spaces, and I individually went over to each one. I said, hey, if you want, you can give me your insurance stuff, and I'll take it to her, and then you can give me yours, and I could facilitate it if you'd like me to. So you can stay away from each other.
Mhm.
And so I went over to the older woman, and the older woman said, hey, thank you for doing that. I want to tell you something. My brother just died,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I just came from his funeral.
Oh my gosh.
I just came from his
She was
funeral.
stressed out and pent up and grieving and
So
just had a lot of emotion, and it just blew out of her.
All right, so there's that, right? And she said, actually, I'm calming down. I think I'll be all right. I went over and talked to the heavyset girl, and she
Mhm.
said, my husband just left me. I just
These poor women. These poor women.
I just finalized my divorce.
Yeah,
It was
so
the craziest thing. And I
she's
said,
depressed and
golly.
stressed out and feeling
Like, so it was
abandoned.
just a perfect storm for them to both flip out on each other.
Each of them had this negative ball inside them that just needed to come out, and that was the pretext for it.
And that's probably why they weren't paying attention while they were driving. They were up in their own
Right.
heads too.
Right.
And so after that, just little ability to say what the real truth was, they both calmed down. They both apologized to each other.
Mhm.
They gave up their insurance paperwork and they drove off, and it was all good. So
Yeah.
what you just said is totally right. There's
Yeah.
really always some kind of ulterior motive. And from being married too, usually when two spouses are getting short with each other, like over the dishes or over, hey, how come you're always leaving your clothes in the bathroom? There's
Right.
something else. There's something else is there, like that is unspoken. And the
Yes.
surface issue is not what the real issue is. But so that's
Right. And so in terms of getting back to the point of convincing people, you do well to keep in mind that there's a whole bunch of stuff there. Whatever may seem like the impediment to being convinced is probably not it. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. It could be childhood trauma going all the way back to that. There's a whole bunch of stuff to dig out if you want to really understand the basis for someone's perceptions and want to overcome them and convince them to buy your product, to come into your store, to see things your way, or
To
to keep
consider your,
to
to
not
consider
freak
your
out.
religion, to consider your politics, to cool off, to not be angry, like
Mhm.
all that. It all applies. But hey, I think we're running long. Maybe we'll continue with this because I actually would like you to tell more of the story about how you convinced cow farmers. So
Okay, yeah, I'm up to do that.
on the next week's episode, we'll get into that. Hey everybody, thank you for listening.
Mhm.
This is Brian and Adam. We own a chocolate company, even though we hardly talked about chocolate at all.
Yeah, this was a pretty esoteric podcast, but the point of the matter is we do own a chocolate
good.
company. We are the Chocolate Bros. That's
Chocolate
what we
Bros.
call this. We own
Yeah.
a chocolate company called Fortunato Chocolate. You can find us at www.fortunatochocolate.com, and you can come to our retail store on, where is it, Adam? Where is it located?
It's on Gilman. It's in
It's on,
Issaquah.
it's on Gilman. It's in Issaquah, Washington. It's on Gilman.
Yeah. Brian and I work in ownership on Saturdays. So if you wanted to come just experience a live version of the Chocolate Bros podcast, we'll be talking about convincing people. We'll
That's
be talking
right.
about avenues versus boulevards. Come on
Same
in.
format, different location. But you know what?
We have the headsets on.
That's right. That's right. We're in different rooms. So you know what, Adam, I feel like we don't get enough people that come in and say, oh, I heard your we get people that say, I saw your ads, or I saw you on, Cairo or whatever. But man, I would love for somebody to come in and say, I don't think it's ever happened yet. I'd love for somebody to come.
Hey, we get a lot of people saying they read the daily email.
Yeah, they read the email. That's right. I sure would love someone to come in and say, oh, I heard your podcast. I love your banter. That would make my day. That would make my month.
And Brian in particular, you're my favorite. I know you'd love to hear that.
I mean, I think it's obvious that that's what they would say if they came in, but maybe it's not obvious. I don't know what's going on in their head.
Brian,
maybe they like big meatheads in their style of banter. I don't know.
Yeah. No.
Instead of appropriate sized human beings with a normal, banter sense.
Well, now what would be very funny is if they came in and say I'm the favorite. That would tickle me. God,
you know what? I would be tickled with that too. As long as they were listening, I would just be thrilled with that. I want one listener to come in the store on a Saturday morning and just say, I came into the podcast. I'm favoriteless. I don't have a declared favorite, but I sure love the banter. I would love it.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen now.
I think I could go as far as to offer like a box of truffles or something to the person who comes in. Here we go. I'm putting it out there, Adam. First podcast listener to come in and reference this comment on this podcast. I'm gonna throw some truffles your way. You're in line for some truffles. It's gonna be truffalicious up in there.
And if you come in on Saturday, the truffles will be fresh.
They're fresh. They're made on Friday night. I mean, that's the best time to get a truffle.
That's a pretty good deal. All right, bro.
Good deal.
Go ahead and sign us off with the Fortunato jingle.
All right. But before I even say the jingle, I just want to say how much I appreciate all the people that are listening to this podcast, that buy, that go online, that visit, that just come in for a free hot chocolate and don't buy anything. I appreciate all of you, because without you, none of this would be happening. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate you. And I'll just say Fortunato, yum.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.